difference between the two. Because the purpose of a ballot is to indicate who you voted for. So if you don't indicate, it will most likely still be put in the ballot box. But since it will not have indicated who you voted for, it becomes a rejected ballot, not a stray one.
Very well. Okay. Point up, Mr.
And so, yes, my lord. And so that was the explanation for that one. The final point I think we wanted to make was a question raised there by our colleagues and brothers from the petitioners with the question of the votes for Nyando. That question, your ladyships and my lords, is dealt.
Transmission by the kids will not be accurate in terms of numbers, absolute numbers. And for that reason, we are not going to rely on transmissions from the kids, but instead we will be using the transmissions via the Form 34Bs, which is arriving now.
We will not take any questions after this.
Stop. Now, see if I understand the argument well, is that the votes cast, the total votes cast for the president were more than those cast for the governors, for example, for the women representative, for example. It's not a question of a president getting more than the governor or what.
We have done the total, my lord, but, and I think IEBC, Mr. Somane, explained it very well. But even when you do that, it's not necessarily true, or the difference was very insignificant. My learned friend will explain that quickly.
Secondly, on matters to do with turnout, it is incorrect for Mr. Odinga to say 3.5 million voters turned out. In fact, 7.5 million voters turned out, and that information is available to the general public.
Uhuru Kenyatta getting 7,144,844 of those votes, and that indicates a 43.44%. But Michelle, remember that 43.44% is not based on the total number of registered voters.
The voter register was opened just hours to the elections. If you look at the total number of voters, it's not the 19,000, but there is an additional 91,000. Maybe you should explain to us where the number is coming from.
Take this one. There is a concern about the tweets that you've been sharing.
Can I answer this? Then you can ask.
Okay.
The disparity between 34As, the transmissions that were done vis-a-vis the 34As received. The transmissions, the forms that were transmitted are higher, and this vis-a-vis the actual logins or authentications by the kids.
About the tweets on 6.5 million. Now we have our team working on, now that we have received, you know, the number of 34As we have received. The team is working on the exact figure of what was the voter turnout.
Well, you know, we've said times above number that Mr. Chebukati should have created predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes. And he needs to know that his role as the chairman of IBC is more of a communication role than a technical position. So when he comes out giving numbers and in a few minutes he decides to review them downwards, it's really unacceptable. For instance, the first time he came on here and he said, we've had a 48% voter turnout, he did not give us the basis on which he was making that announcement. Now, 48% of votes, registered voters, number of people who have cast the ballots, he did not specify.
Of Form 34A, in order to compare them to those posted on the IEBC website. Our analysis of these 540 forms shows the following. 536 out of the 540 forms on the IEBC portal were legible. So when we compared ours to what was on IEBC, some we could not compare because not all of them were legible. 7 out of the 536 forms did not have official IEBC stamp. 1 out of the 536 forms was not signed by the presiding officer. And in one instance, the figure for Uhuru Kenyatta in the ELOG form was 86, but the figure in the IEBC form, which was then also transferred to Form 34B, shows 286, so a difference of 200 votes. On voter turnout, we noted that there was very low voter turnout.
The absence of party agents in most of the polling stations, they did say that aspect did compromise this particular election, and also did indicate that the observers, there was an opportunity for manipulation of data. They gave some of the examples, like in Garissa Township constituency, where they did indicate that there was a malpractice where some of those figures were being tampered with. They also talked about maybe the violence that did envelop some parts of the country did also affect this particular election, and also the low voter turnout. But now also we've seen now the ELOG come out, and ELOG observation group, they are also focusing on this idea, or on this aspect of the lack of party agents in all polling stations, and also there was observers, majority of observers in these polling stations. That is one of the reasons they are citing that cannot make, that they are citing they cannot determine whether this election was credible or not, and also given the political environment. But joining me is Regina Opondo, who is the chair of ELOG's steering committee, just to shed more light on this aspect. Yes, looking at it, your report, it's like you're casting doubts about its credibility. What is the situation?
What we're saying that when you look at the elections as a process, as the Chief Justice reminded us, not the event, then we can't speak about credibility even at this stage. You have to look at the process in its whole totality. So start from the pre-election phase, the actual election day, and the post-election process. And we're still in the post-election process, because you never know, a case might go tomorrow to court. We've had people talk about 90 days. We've had people wanting to challenge this exercise now, as was challenged last time. So as we said last time, it's difficult to speak about credibility at this stage if you want to talk about the whole process. But we do feel that this election that happened on the 26th of October had several challenges that have made the environment not conducive for elections to happen in a free, fair and credible manner. So some of the things we've looked at, number one is the issue of security and of peace. You must have an environment for peace, for elections to happen, which was not possible. Very many people have died, very many people were displaced, very many people were not secure to come out of their homes, and a number were disenfranchised because the environment was not secure. So that might not have been a fault of IEBC, but it's a problem of the general environment. You have to talk about the turnout, which was much lower than last time. While in certain areas it was very high, in other areas there was no turnout. And we're talking about the country as a totality, so you must talk about that. If you talk about issues of voter education and whether people had enough information to participate in the process, then even that area we have a bit of a challenge, because IEBC only had 60 days, and remember they were struggling to do voter education even in the period leading up to the 8th of August. Then in this 1 month or so, it's highly doubtful. We've not managed to observe issues of voter education, but it's highly doubtful that they did significant and comprehensive voter education.